Let's look at Genesis chapter 1. It's interesting. The start of something new. It's always usually an interesting place to be, and it's usually a little bit of an unfamiliar, kind of strange place to be. Now you can relate. You've been there before at the start of something new, maybe that you're starting or that somebody else is starting. It's interesting. The opening of this holy book is the start of something new. It was at some point. In fact, we could say that it still is, so that whenever you open up that thick tome of Holy Bible to those thin pages, this one's got some front matter, so it's not quite so, thin first page in a big giant volume. But whenever you open up to those thin introductory pages, we could say each time you are going back to the start of something new. Because it says, after all, in the beginning, at the start. Start of what? Start of something new, I suppose. In the beginning, God did something new. And it was dark. And it was unfinished. And it was empty. And here at the beginning of something new, we are allowed to linger at that glorious, unfamiliar snapshot of a work that's empty, incomplete, and barren. Can a barren void be glorious? Is lifeless expanse in the dark ever a good thing? Genesis 1. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. And the earth was formless and empty. You may remember the good old King James, void. Darkness covered the surface of the watery depths, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the surface of the waters. Then God said, "Let there be light." And there was light. God saw that the light was good, and God separated the light from the darkness. God called the light day. He called the darkness night. Evening came and then morning, the first day. You know what's interesting in Genesis 1? There are really just two poles in this story. Two polarities, two different kinds of things, two options, two colors. There's the good, as God calls it, over and over. And then there's the not yet developed. The void, the dark, the barren, the empty, the not. So it's kind of like God makes this distinction between his light and his dark, between what he has touched and what he has left as it was. And that distinction, that separation, it was good. So we've got incompleteness, we've got partiality, kind of like finitude, kind of like the ticking of temporal time. I think that these things, incompleteness, partiality, our finitude, we're limited, we're not God, and the ticking of temporal time, we're stuck in this temporal, time-bound universe. I think all of these things are the glorious canvas upon which God works and the glorious beauty that he loves to share with us. Let's not balk at such remnants of Eden as though they were the sting of hell. Some of us are familiar with the idea, I'm pretty sure it goes back to Augustine, the idea that maybe we can define sin or evil as privation. The idea is evil's not a thing that God or somebody made at some point. We define it in relation to the good, which is God's work. The idea of sin as privation. But I think when we read Genesis 1, I think we're forced to realize sin is definitely not, evil is definitely not merely the absence of God's good, the absence of something beautiful that God made. Because you may notice in the portion we just read that God made day and night both. He made the light and he left a part untouched, and he divided between the two. And that distinction, he said, it is good. There's no sin in this world yet. There's no evil in this world yet. And I think that's the same as our human finitude. It's beautiful. Every bit of the incompleteness and the partiality that we see in Genesis chapter 1 is part of a process that wasn't supposed to be done just like that. And it's beautiful. So we see the structure here in Genesis chapter 1. It's kind of like it starts off with God made and it was void. And then it transitions to this sequence of God said and God saw. Repeat, God said and God saw. For example, in verses 9 through 10, and God said, let the water under the sky be gathered into one place, and let the dry land appear. And it was so. And God called the dry land earth, and he called the gathering of the waters seas. And God saw that it was good. God said, let this thing happen. God saw that it was good. So we started off the chapter with God made, it was void. And then we get this sequence building on each other. God said and God saw. And then, near the end of the chapter, after we get God's blessing on the creatures, when he said, be fruitful, multiply, fill the waters of the seas, let the birds multiply on the earth. So then after that, as part of the God said and God saw routine, then we get what I'm calling the hymn of man. And then we get rule. And it was good. When I say the hymn of man, I don't know if we should call that a hymn or not. I just noticed that in the HCSB here, they mark it as poetry. This is in verse 27 when it says, so God created man in his own image. He created him in the image of God. He created them, male and female. And that's followed by God taking what he said to the creatures and changing it a little for this new kind of creature. God blessed them, and God said to them, be fruitful, multiply, fill the earth and subdue it. Rule fish of the sea, the birds of the sky, and every creature that crawls on the earth, i.e., all the other ones that he just made and pronounced a blessing upon. So, God made was void. God said and God saw. God said and God saw. And then the hymn of man, God made. And then rule. Verse 28, it has been called the dominion mandate, rightfully so, as God's words for all mankind. But I wonder if sometimes we might be a little prone to misunderstand the tone of what's being said. John Sailhammer, a commentator who wrote the Genesis portion of the Exposited Bible Commentary, he made a comment on verse 28 there. He says, the imperatives in the Hebrew, in other words, the do, that kind of the imperative, should not be understood as commands here, since the introduction statement identifies them as a blessing. Notice there it says, God blessed them and said, be fruitful, multiply, etc. Rule. The imperative, along with the jussive, is the common mood of the blessing. So grammatically, he's suggesting this isn't a command. This is a blessing. This is a pronouncement of a blessing here. So maybe we don't really want to think of God's exuberant words of joy here as some kind of military-style edict or a corporate business policy, but rather more like a beautiful coming-of-age gift that he's placing in somebody's lap with a broad smile and a twinkle in the eye. All right, so we had God made, and it was void. We had God said, God saw, God said, and God saw. And then we had this beautiful poem of God made man in the image of God. And we had rule. So what we've got here is we've got the goodness, we've got the light, we've got the imago Dei, i.e. the image of God. We got this generous gift of the dominion mandate, which would be just egregiously mistyped if we thought of it as a slavish command or an authoritarian decree. Notice the language, I have given to you. Notice the exuberant words, for you. These things are for you. As though God is just thrilled at the gifts he's giving to man. We could say that this chapter could be thought of as God's glory and the void. That's the beginning. At the beginning of this new thing, there's God's glory and there's the void, the barren, followed by God's glory out of the void, because out of the void God speaks and things emerge, partial, incomplete, not quite there. God's glory in the void, God's glory out of the void, and then God's glory given to man. And something new has come. Out of the sand, God forms this sand creature and gives it life. God's glory and the void, God's glory out of the void, God's glory given to man, given to us. So in Genesis chapter 1, darkness and chaos are God's canvas, just like human finitude and God's progressive grace. On that canvas, God makes beauty. God makes beauty, joy, and greatness. And though these graces are finite, and at every point are longing for the further growing and changing that he intended them for, yet there's no such thing as sin. May we praise the God who gives for the canvas on which he works, and for the glory and joy that he has given to man. God, thank you for allowing us a fleeting glimpse of the Edenic vision. Thank you for putting it here for us. May we live with lifted eyes fixed on the light of your gracious face, and may each of us press into your restoration, press into the kingdom of the glory of God.